Hello and welcome to a somewhat late by now, but better late than never, video on the update Seek and Destroy and what it has done to us naval players. First of all, I'll be going over the new ships as usual. Starting off with the Americans with the new frigate USS Coolbow. USS Coolbow is, as a frigate, a rank 5 coastal vessel sitting after the LCS in the tech tree at a battle rating of 4.0 with a research cost of 280,000 RP. Quite a high research cost, but that is to be expected of a frigate. So what do we expect for this new vessel? Well, sadly not a lot. It is armed with two 5-inch guns in the same kind of turret you'll see on the Fletcher, and that's really it when it comes to its anti-shipping armament. Sitting at a battle rating of 4.0, it has half the armament of an Alwyn, and well, it's not that fast either, coming in stock at 36 kilometers an hour. I do not own the Coolbow yet, but I have heard it is not the greatest. Although its main armament is certainly a step up compared to the USS Hoquiam. USS Coolbow is not too special really, but it is quite a cool looking ship with apparently quite a storied history. But for more on that I think you'd better watch Commander Tyrrell's video on the USS Coolbow. Then moving on to Germany, we get the Bernau, a new missile boat. The Bernau is a rank 4 German coastal vessel sitting after Christian der Grosse at a battle rating of 3.3. Bernau costs 220,000 RP to research, which is significantly higher compared to other rank 4s and actually the same kind of research cost as the first rank 5 Albatross in the same tech tree. Luckily, Bernau does get the same reward multipliers as a rank 5 ship, but not the same research efficiencies of course. The unique thing about Bernau is its quadruple Strela launcher on the front of the ship. These Strelas, however, are not the same anti-air missiles as on top-tier Russian tanks. These Strelas are quite a bit worse, with a maximum lock-on range against propeller-driven aircraft of 1.2 kilometers. The 25mm guns the Bernau is armed with as its main armament genuinely outrange this missile in an anti-air capability. These missiles are also not under control of AI gunners, so no help there either. As a side note, the Strelas on the Russian ships that come armed with them, like the 12412 and others, are still not functional. The main armament of the Bernau are 3 dual 25mm gun turrets. These should be familiar to you if you've played the Russian tech tree on the PR-183. Personally, I'm not the greatest fan of these turrets due to the long reload, but their hitting power is quite alright. The Bernau, however, I do not think it'll benefit from that hitting power too much, as it is quite a large and slow vessel for a battle rating of 3.3. It should, however, get a coastal spawn, so at least that has some protection going for it. Also, usually you'll only get 2 of the 3 turrets on the target. However, there are certain firing angles towards the rear of the ship where you might get all 3 turrets firing on a target. Then, moving on from the Bernau, we go to the Russians, with the PR-1145-1. Being a rank 5 battle rating 4.7 Russian coastal vessel, now coming in after the moved PR-12412 in the right hand line of the Russian coastal tech tree. 1145 does not really have unique armament. The frontal 76mm turret should be familiar to you if you've already played the 12412. 1145-1 does carry 8 torpedoes in 2 quadruple launchers, 1 on either side of the ship. These torpedoes, however, as on most modern ships, are anti-submarine torpedoes who do not carry the biggest warhead. And also, again a side note, these torpedoes do not have any homing capabilities in-game. These torpedoes go at a speed of 74 kilometers an hour, a range of 8 kilometers and a warhead of 80 kilograms of TNT, but should be enough to deal with destroyers. However, at a battle rating of 4.7, you'll be facing more than just destroyers. The main ace up the sleeve of the 1145-1 is its speed. Stock going 103 kilometers an hour in realistic battles. So 1145-1 should make quite a nice coastal capper even in higher battle rating lineups. All in all, kind of a neat vehicle, but nothing too special yet. Then moving on from Russia we go to Britain with our first blue water vessel, HMS Queen Mary. A British battlecruiser sitting after HMS Invincible at rank 5 and a battle rating of 6.3, with a research cost of 230,000 RP. HMS Queen Mary is quite the interesting ship actually. Although it isn't too well armoured, but that is to be expected of an early battlecruiser, it does carry 13.5-inch guns. It's considerably big guns for a 6.3 ship. Personally, I haven't seen too many Queen Marys yet, but the ones I have faced do seem relatively tough for what they are. And it is also pretty quick, going 45 kilometers an hour, one stock. One thing I do want to note is that Queen Mary has 0 anti-aircraft guns. Like, actually 0, not even light caliber like 3-inch guns, none. All it has are casemate secondaries. Personally, I think Queen Mary is quite a solid addition to the British 6-3 lineup of Dreadnought and Colossus, which were somewhat lackluster battleships. Queen Mary might not be an upgrade in terms of protection, but in terms of mobility and firepower it certainly will be. Then, moving on to Japan, they get a quote-unquote new cruiser, Haguro. Haguro is a sister ship to the premium Miyoko, sitting at 5.7 with a research cost of 105,000 RP. In my opinion, Haguro should not be a 5.7 but a 6.0 because it has 10 8-inch guns. Sure, its armor doesn't hold up, but neither does the Mogami's. All in all, Haguro is a pretty standard late Japanese heavy cruiser. Pretty good firepower from its main armament, lackluster armor protection, long lance torpedoes. However, luckily the Haguro does come in a late war anti-air refit, having only around about 4 25mm guns less than Miyoko, if I'm not mistaken at least. I'm certainly not going to complain about another Japanese heavy cruiser to get, but it is nothing special. Then we get to Italy, who also have a new coastal vessel, the Alano, sitting at rank 5, a battle rating of 3.7, coming after the MC490. The Alano costs 250,000 RP to research. The Alano should be pretty familiar to those who have already reached the higher echelons of coastal vessels, being an American LCS vessel but with a different armament setup. The frontal 76mm gun has been replaced with a single Bofors, which why not? And there are also 4 additional 50 cals which are not present on either the American LCS or the Japanese Asago. Whilst personally I'm not the greatest fan of the LCS either because it is a bit slow and rather fragile for 3.7 with relatively easy to hit magazines. The Alano and the other LCS variants are quite iconic for top tier coastal, and with 5 Bofors you'll certainly not be lacking in the Dakar department. If you'll be missing out on the 76mm HEVT for anti-aircraft work though, well, that'll come down to you and your own anti-aircraft gunnery. All in all, a very nice addition to the Italian coastal lineup. Then we move on to France with our most additions this update. Let's start with the Blue Water Tree, where we get a new premium, the Tornade, which is nothing special. It is just a premium version of the Reserve Burrasque. The Tornade does come with a very snazzy camo, and I think 2 more 13.2s, but other than that it is just the same ship as the Reserve Burrasque. Then we get to one of the more interesting ships this update, the Guichet, coming in at a rank 2, battle rating of 4.3, sitting after Vauquelin, having a research cost of 14,000 RP. Guichet is one of the only new vessels I've actually played this update and I've already spaded. I found it to be quite fun, even though it doesn't have any armor piercing on its 3 dual 105mm guns. It is also the first ship in game to carry the iconic French dual 57mm anti-air guns. In my experience, these guns have been doing wonders against aircraft with their high velocity and high rate of fire, even despite their lack of HEVT. The Guichet also has quite a unique torpedo setup, although the torpedoes are not that great, with a maximum speed of 46 km an hour, a range of 5 km, but a somewhat impressive warhead of 200 kg of TNT. All in all, the Guichet adds a unique, although not incredibly potent ship to the French 4.3 lineup. I would definitely consider getting Guichet, but do not expect it to perform too well unless you know what you're doing or you just do not care about its performance. Then moving on to the most promising addition this update for France. Its first coastal vessel, the VLT-2. The VLT-2 is a pretty standard Bofors boat, being, a coastal vessel with a Bofors mount in front and a Bofors mount in the rear, and 2 additional 20mm Oerlikons. However, What it means is that the French coastal tree will be soon at hand. How soon is not to be determined. If we are lucky, we'll get it in the next update, which should be around September. If you aren't lucky, well, we can only guess then. For those that no longer remember how this works, a new tree is usually introduced with a premium. You can buy this premium to get access to a closed beta test when the tree first gets introduced. So assuming that the French coastal tree will be introduced in September, only the people who have bought the premium will be able to play the French coastal tree, or you have to fulfill certain tasks to get access to the French coastal tree. This is usually just play battles in French ships. It's similar to a star event, but not quite the same. The unique feature about VLT2 is its torpedo tubes, which can actually rotate ever so slightly, which is a unique feature on a coastal vessel of this size. There are larger frigates and sub-chasers and corvettes that have rotating torpedo tubes, but this is the first of its type on a fast torpedo boat. Personally, I haven't bought VLT2 yet. I might get it when the French coastal tree is soon at hand and when we actually know when it's going to drop. But for the time being, there's no real point in getting it unless you're really insistent that you need to have a coastal capper in all of your blue water lineups. At that point, if it's worth the 30 euros for you, that's for you to decide. But I am going to abstain from it for the time being. Usually I'd now go over the other big changes, like the new maps, which there's one new map and some map changes, but I'll save those for last for now, and you'll see why in a bit. So first let's go over the smaller changes, so to speak. First of all, when you now play Naval for the first time, which I cannot confirm for myself, but when you play Naval for the very first time, instead of you being forced to play a tutorial, the tutorial is now integrated into the first Naval match you play, for coastal vehicles. I have only heard how this roughly works, but from what I've heard, is that you get the same objectives as in the coastal tutorial, but you're doing them during a live match, quote unquote. You must also remember that the first matches somebody plays in Naval are only against bots. So this is somewhat reasonable, but at the same time, why? To my knowledge, this is the only game mode this has ever happened to, where the tutorial is integrated into the game mode itself, into the random battles. At least I'm not familiar with it being in air, arcade, or realistic or ground battles at all. Whether or not it will be an effective strategy is to be found out, I guess, but it's not something I can experience myself, sadly. Then, a big change is the bridge. Previously, when ships were shot in the bridge, you would have no control over your ship whatsoever for the duration that your bridge was out. This is now changed. Instead of the bridge knocking out all control for the time the bridge is out, you now have severely limited control, with these limits being a much larger turning circle and much slower engine speed changes. However, this is definitely a good change. I have also noticed that in the past, before this update, when the bridge got taken out, it was a forced repair. It is the same function as your normal repairs, and it was forced upon you as soon as your bridge got taken out. This doesn't seem to be the case anymore. At least I've had it happen where my bridge got taken out, but the repair doesn't start automatically, which is very nice if you also happen to be on fire and if that fire happens to be close to your magazine. All in all, good change. Probably would have been better if the bridge repair wasn't a forced repair at all, but I'll take it. And another quite neat one, especially if you're a German fan, and you'll find out soon, is that the following vessels have received air search radar. These being Le Malin, the French Leopard 3.7 destroyer, M802, T22, T31, Z15, Z20, Z25, 32, 43, 46 and 47, as well as the cruisers Emden, Nuremberg and Leipzig. So if you're a German fan, I assume you'll be liking the additions of Morse air search radars. Then moving on to the smaller stuff is Bravi, the Russian missile boat, has now got a reload animation for its missile launcher. Quite neat, but it does actually impact the use of that launcher as well. Before the reload time starts, the launcher has to return to a neutral position. So technically speaking, this has actually increased the missile reload for the Bravi, but it's not that noticeable compared to the already 50-second reload. Then the French cruisers Suffren, Colbert and Émile Bertin now have their floatplane visible on the catapult, which is a very nice touch. Then sounds have changed, mainly the alarm sounds. So an additional alarm sound has been made for when there's a fire in the ammo stores, and the fire extinguishing icon now also flashes orange if there's a fire near the ammunition. The hit cam has changed to make it a bit clearer. They added these little fire effects to show where a ship has been set on fire. Sometimes it bugs out where there'll be a fire icon just in the middle somewhere above a ship's bridge. But oh well, the hit cam has never been perfect and it probably never will. They've made it so that fuel tanks are not shown really anymore on the hit cam, which can be a bit annoying because fuel tanks do function as armor or as some layer of protection, and them not being displayed in the hit cam anymore does make it difficult to see whether or not they have been knocked out in certain parts of an enemy ship. But oh well. This also goes for torpedo protection, by the way. This has been done to make the internals of your target ship more visible, so you can more obviously see if ammunition is above waterline, if the engines are hidden, where exactly the engines are, stuff like that. It's a good change, but it does also make some things a bit more annoying, but they're well. Gain some, you lose some. Then a new keyboard shortcut has been made for switching weapon groups. So instead of having to press Alt 1, 2 or 3 to switch to primary, secondary or tertiary weapons, you can now by default press Ctrl E to cycle between the weapon groups. So if you press it once, you'll go to your secondaries, twice to your tertiaries, press it a third time, you'll go to your primaries again. I did notice that it is bugged on some ships, so it won't properly switch back to primaries and stuff, so I personally don't use it. But hey, I'm not going to complain about more keybinds. At least not yet. The voice lines for the German ships have now also been improved and corrected. They will no longer say Kampfschiff when fighting a battleship, they will now actually say Schlachtschiff. And I am incredibly sorry for butchering the German pronunciation, I am not German after all. But yeah, the German voice lines should now be more bearable to native German speakers. Then, a really big one for me personally that I will be using a lot in future videos, a new feature in the hangar, is a Show Crew Distribution button. A perfect ship to showcase this with is USS Alwyn. So you go to your hangar, you go to Armor, you go to Protection Analysis, and then you'll see the new button, Show Crew Distribution. You click the button, and as you can see, it will now show you where the crew is positioned in a ship, with red being the highest concentration of enemy crew, and green being the lowest. This is an exceptionally good tool for people to understand where crew is actually located, and it does actually also depend on your viewing angle to show you where the crew is located. So it'll even work top down. Maybe that's interesting for you if you want to try and do some bombing runs on ships to know where you want to, bomb them. If you're not going for magazines at least. All in all, this is an amazing new tool to have been added for newer players and older players alike. Another ship I really like showcasing this feature on is the Des Moines class cruiser. Because, and this is quite nifty, you will see that it has a crew compartment behind the rear turret. But it is quite a noticeable spot you have to shoot on the Des Moines class cruisers, as it contains quite a large portion of the crew as well. So you might be able to tell, I really like this feature, and I will incorporate it into future reviews when talking about survivability of ships. So you have that to look forward to. Another neat little change are new kill icons. These being icons for, at least from what I've found, ammo detonation, crew loss, an ammo detonation caused by fire, a ship sinking by fire, a ship sinking by flooding, a hull break, any gun kill, being even anti-air kills, and a torpedo kill. The only somewhat annoying part about these kill icon changes is that it no longer mentions by what shell the enemy got sunk. However, I don't mind this too much because that usually didn't really give you an accurate idea of why a ship sank anyways, whilst these new kill icons do. Because in the previous kill messages it was only really the last shell that hit a ship that would say what shell the ship got sunk by. Which, if you're a battleship being sunk by being hit by 3 torpedoes, only to then get hit by the secondary gun of some cruiser, and to then say battleship got sunk by 100mm HEVT, for example, it doesn't make much sense. Whilst with these new kill icons, they will actually showcase the exact cause of sinking from that ship. And I'm all for that. Then, do we have any more small changes? Not really. As always, I always recommend people to read the patch notes for themselves, and I have also linked the release day patch notes in the description below. And now we get to arguably the worst part of this update, the map changes. In order of least to most atrocious, we have Aleutian Islands, Volcanic Islands, Fuego Islands, and South Kvarken. So, let's start with Aleutian Island. They made 2 changes to this map. One obvious, one less so. First, the good change is that they moved the coastal spawns on this map closer to the A and B point, which is very good because Aleutian Island is quite a large map, and with the slower coastal vessels it was quite a chore to actually get to the objectives on this map. Like, for example, if you're playing the German barges, the SF-40s, the AFDs, it was a real pain getting anywhere close to the objectives before half the match was over. So moving the coastal spawns closer in, all for it. But then, a very, very questionable change is they removed one island, the island south of the sea point. And in case you can't tell by putting these 2 maps side by side, can you see the problem with this? If you can't, let me spell it out for you. The blue water spawns now have direct line of sight to each other as soon as you spawn, which they didn't before. Another thing to note is, whilst not obvious on these minimaps, is that there used to be a blue water spawn in, I think, like the GH2 and 9, around about there, a little bit north, like a little bit north of the sea point. That spawn point also no longer exists, so all blue water ships on that map now have to spawn within this range of each other and direct line of sight of each other. And do you want to know the exact verbatim reason why they removed the island blocking spawn to spawn shooting? And again, I'll be quoting the patch notes verbatim for this change. The islands, it's just one island, blocking and preventing the passage of Blue Water Fleet vehicles to point C have been removed. I cannot stress to you how much this one sentence annoys the ever-loving fuck out of me. Because this map, the only blue water vessels that really get this map are destroyers and frigates. They had no problem getting to the sea point because of that island. As you can see from the minimaps, it is not blocking access to the sea point at all. The only thing that it might cause to do is that as soon as the 2 enemy destroyer forces meet, they'll be in very close range brawling. But is that a bad thing? Look, the reason that that island blocked passage to the sea point is ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense at all. And again, this is the least atrocious change in this update. We'll get to the fun stuff later. It's okay. They made it a very questionable change, but I think most of us might be able to live with it, since this is usually a map you'll see with coastals and destroyer mixes, with frigates. I haven't yet played this BR myself, so I haven't seen these changed maps myself yet. I haven't actually been playing that much Naval at all recently, at least in lower BR brackets. So, okay, I'll let this one slide, but I'm already ticked off. So then, we get to our next map. Volcanic Islands. And ooh boy, what they have done to this fucking map. So, first things first, they again have moved the coastal spawns closer to the objectives. Now being actually like in the channels in between the big islands around the B point, which, okay change. I'm actually not against it. I don't think it was that necessary on this map, because now it also kind of prevents the coasters to go to C and A through the outside, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but I'll let it slide. They have also increased the height of the tiny island ring around the B and around the B point, which nice cover change, which adds quite a bit of cover to coastal vessels, as these islands usually could be shot over. In my personal opinion, I prefer the lower islands, because playing around cover you can shoot over is fun, in my opinion. But I can understand why some people find it frustrating. But now, the fun parts. Again, if you might notice, between putting these two minimaps side by side, do you see some islands missing? Perhaps north of the A point, or around the C point? The A point islands missing is not the greatest problem, because the islands that actually cover the two spawns are still there for the A point, roughly, but you'll see some examples later. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention is that they moved the cruiser spawn on both sides also closer to the center. Very nice. Not against that at all. But the C point has been fucking butchered. Instead of now having island cover you can approach C from, you now have open ocean and spawn to spawn shooting. And again, do you want to know the reason why islands preventing spawn to spawn shooting were removed? Again, I'll be quoting the patch notes verbatim. Where is it? There it is. Some islands on the collision path between Blue Water Fleet vehicles have been removed. What on God's green earth is that supposed to mean? Islands on the path, on the collision path between Blue Water Fleet vehicles have been removed. Because yes, it is a bad thing for there to be cover in a straight line from spawn to spawn. I can't. I do not understand why that change was made, because it made Volcanic Island arguably one of my favorite maps. Shit tons worse, because there is no safe way for either team to get to sea. The red team has a somewhat safer path with that one island there, but the blue team is just out in the open, just butt-ass naked, hanging in the breeze, open for any and all enemies. I don't understand. And the reason for these islands being removed in the patch notes is not making it any better, because they're not good reasons at all. And this is just the second map, we have 2 more to go. Oh, Christ. So then, going from Volcanic Islands to Fuego Islands, which some veterans among you might already remember having been changed for the worse before, now is this. So what they've done, in case you can't notice, we'll put 2 minimaps side by side again. They have moved these 2 islands further apart. They've removed the islands north in and south of B altogether, and they've removed the islands north and south of C. The changes around the sea point, I can agree with a bit more. I have actually played Fago Islands a few times now in battleships, and I can agree with the changes around the sea point. The complete removal of cover around the B point again, though. Why? And that's not the worst part. They fiddled around with the spawn points again, making destroyers now spawn like this. Why? Waco Island was already not the greatest in terms of like the destroyer spawn point near B, being spawned like facing all the way to the right, which was an awkward angle. But now you have a direct line of sight to the enemy spawn, at around about 7 or 6 kilometers. Why? Just why? I'll tell you why. Shall we go to the patch notes again and read them verbatim? Let's see, what is it this time? Again, verbatim. In both domination missions, some islands near the sea point have been removed, and the remaining ones have been moved away from the map center. That's it. Completely like glossing over the fact they removed 3 islands from the B point entirely, and then moving the spawns closer so there's now spawn to spawn shooting from destroyers. What is this? Who? What? I'm trying to word this without sounding too insane, and actually in English and not in Dutch. But what corporate decision decided this? Who wanted to make it impossible now for coastals to actually try and cap B? Like, let's say you're playing a 4-3 match or a 4-0 match with destroyers and coastals mixed. The coastals now have to go into open ocean and capture B, which is now also open ocean. Like, part of me, deep down, doesn't dislike it, because I hate coastal cappers to a certain extent. But it's also not fun for destroyers, because... Okay, now you have no cover to play around at all. You now have to just... What is this? I have played Fago Islands on quite a few BRs actually. I've played it on stream whilst spading the Guichet. And... I hate to say it, but it does actually work for blue water ships. Somewhat. But it's still not great. It's the destroyer spawns just aren't right. It's also made it so that the island in between B and C is much, much more important. In every single match I've played with ships that can actually reach that island, people camp behind that island, because there's no other way to get to cover and influence both B and C. So I wouldn't be surprised if another half year down the line we'll see that island in between B and C disappear as well. But oh well. Then we get to our worst offender. South Kvarken. And my god, have they butchered it. I'm not quite sure how effective you can see this, but comparing it to minimaps, because I am doing this voice recording before recording the footage. But they've just nuked the south of the map. All the islands, like south of the E line, gone. Just gone. And this has led to some really, really funny side effects when you get the encounter mission. Because if you look at the encounter minimap, do you notice the convoy just sitting there in open water? You know, next to the enemy spawn point. All the enemies have to do is move south, and they can shoot 7 out of 10 of the convoy ships on the red team with impunity. Because the red team spawns like 14 kilometers away from them, so they can't really effectively deal with enemy ships just going for the convoy. And obviously, the red team can't do the same because the blue team's convoy is sitting behind an island. At least for the most part. So okay. They removed literally all the cover south of the map. And do you want to know why, dear viewers? The exact verbatim reason? There were too many islands for Blue Water Fleet vehicles. That's it. There were too many islands for Blue Water Fleet vehicles. There was too much cover, so we nuked almost all of it. How? How do you design a map with... You know, I kind of liked South Kvarken. There's a lot of people that hate South Kvarken, but I liked it because you actually had to think of a route. You could use a lot of islands to hide behind. You could actually use cover and use sightlines to try and deal with one enemy at a time at your own pace. All gone. Just gone. If you spawn down south, you're open water gunboating at 14km range. Oh boy, because we don't have enough open water maps already, don't we? This genuinely pisses me off. I was fine. I started today very fine. I have a holiday tomorrow when I'm recording this. You know, I'm in a good mood. But looking at these maps again and reading the verbatim reasons why they changed just makes me mad. Oh, but they added more islands to the coastal area of South Kvarken because that was needed. What? And that's not... The thing is also about the patchnote, they've made a change to, again, the red team's side in this. They've made a change to like the north side of their spawn, which is actually quite important, but completely glossed over it. And I, by an entire stroke of luck, managed to record pre and post update, which should be visible somewhere down the line in this video. But just... Why was it? They made a change where the north spawn, the north left spawn, now has a narrower wind gap to sail between, only wide enough for one battleship in either gap. So let's say you have a battleship match and all you spawn north. If one battleship get themselves fucking stuck in that gap, he will block your entire team from actually moving to the objectives. And that's only a problem on one side of the map. The other side doesn't have that problem. Oh my god. You know, these map changes made me question, when did we actually get all of our maps? Like, when were they made and how, well, like, what was our naval map history? And I made a little spreadsheet about it, visible here. I want you to note that after New Power, after the update we've got battleships, we have gotten 5 new maps. That's it. 5. You want to know the best part of those maps? 2 are coastal exclusive, being Drowned City and Viborg Bay. Golden Bay is a maximum BR of 5.0, and Bering Sea is a maximum BR of 4.0. The only map addition after the addition of battleships was Franz Josef Land, but that's an entirely different shit show, because that was a quote-unquote new game mode, which had these coastal batteries you could destroy, and then, without rhyme or reason, without even mentioning it, they removed those coastal batteries from that map, entirely. The only thing that made that map, like, really unique, removed it. Gone, without a trace. The batteries are still there as decorations, I think. I'm not even entirely sure. So by doing this little experiment, I'm actually trying to look into when maps were designed, I have come to the conclusion that they genuinely don't know how to map design for like cruisers and battleships. But then the weird thing is they do actually have quite a few good battleship maps. These being, in my personal opinion, New Zealand Cape, Palau Islands, like really good battleship maps. Genuinely, like they're big. They have nice amounts of cover. You can play around even with battleships. You know, I could probably rant about maps for another 30 minutes. But for the sake of brevity of this video, I'll be cutting it here. But just know that naval maps have now gotten a room rent-free in my head. And I do not know if that's a good or a bad thing. But anyways, that is update Seek and Destroy for Naval, which actually is a pretty solid update. Ignoring the very questionable map changes and the reasons, a solid update. It is still as usual, slow. We haven't gotten any major breakthroughs for top tier naval. We haven't gotten any further decompression for naval now that the new aircraft BRs are a thing, Gaijin. Please, someday soon. Because I really don't like fighting Scharnhorst and Mutsus in my 6.3 Dreadnought. I have been grinding my German battleship lineup, and I will say I really like decompression to 7377 just so I do not have to fight 7.0 battleships anymore. At least the current 7.0s. Okay, let's stop the rant. And again, to summarize, a few new vehicles, a lot of coastals, a lot of cool vehicles, a lot of interesting boats. I think they are at least. We've gotten a new map, which is pretty good. Map changes are questionable. We've got a lot of different quality of life things, especially. And I will not forget the new crew heat map, as I like to call it, which I will be using a lot. And you should as well, if you're ever having problems with where to shoot a ship. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. I hope you got some enjoyment out of this video. And I will be trying to make a few more in the next coming weeks. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. And I'll be back hopefully soon.